Hey readers! Welcome back to another episode of Not Reading for Content. We are here for our final discussion of The Devils today. We're very excited to end this journey with you guys and tell you guys our thoughts on what happened with these characters. But before we get there, we do have our bookish bite for the day. So, Leandra, will you tell me how you feel as a person who has recently become more of a series reader than you have in the past? How do you feel about cliffhangers? Do you like them? Do you hate them? Or they just depends on the book? Tell me your thoughts.
Indeed, I have become someone who, if anything, to extend this idea further, a person who reads series in order. I have grown to respect the series order as, it should be, depending on the series you're reading. And with cliffhangers, I feel as though I can accept them. They can be thrilling, they can be exciting, especially if there has been this huge climax. We have a rise in the action, and then, a crescendo, the action is suddenly simmering, and then to leave us with one more intriguing thing to get us pumped for the next adventure and, not be caught, on flat feet. We suddenly have a big cliffhanger or a big reveal. So I totally understand the excitement, and it can be great. I will say that possibly with every passing year, I don't know if I'm becoming a curmudgeonly reader. It depends. Sometimes a cliffhanger can be really heavy-handed, right? Like it can be really, really overdone and really sugary and frustrating depending on what they're leaving you with,
Yeah.
especially if the rest of the narrative isn't left to be satisfied. I feel as though if I'm satisfied by everything that's happened in this one book, and at least the a plot of that book has been wrapped up, and maybe there's an overarching story and
Yeah.
a cliffhanger is left in that section, then I think we're good. But if it is, it depends. It just depends on how invested I am with everything, because a cliffhanger can make me like love a story even more, and maybe my rating will have to be a series rating, for it to really be encompassed. Or if I'm not vibing with a book and they leave me on a cliffhanger, that could get me into a rage. like it actually could make me more angry depending on what that cliffhanger is and what has happened previously. So it's a mixed bag. But I do think that cliffhangers are, like, in general, all in good fun. And
Mhm.
so they won't make or break a book for me, unless I really think it's out of order. Like, for instance, a big cliffhanger, I could probably still give a book 5 stars. It just depends on what happened before it. I can accept some ambiguity. I can accept not having all of the answers at the end of a book. It's just that if it feels like the author wrote themselves into a corner and then they need more time, and unfortunately the book is over, then that's when I kind of wag my little finger at them, thinking, shame on you. How about you?
Yeah, I think that if enough trust has been built up for me with the author throughout the story, I'm okay with the cliffhanger at the end. I am like you in the sense that I want it to be in the through line mystery or the through line story. I don't want it to be in the primary plot. I do want each book to feel like its own story and that we do get a wrap up, we get closure with a lot of things. We actually read a series together, or not a series, but we read one book in the series, which I'm not going to remember the title of it. It was the Wickwire Watch was the book title. I don't
Mhm.
remember what the series title is, but I really liked the story. However, at the end, were left with a lot of questions. And so I think in that instance, I was a little frustrated because there were so many cool things happening in that storyline, but I don't think enough questions had been answered to satisfy me with what we got. And we didn't even get a cliffhanger at the end of that. It was just the story kind of ends and you have to go into the next book. Now, on the other spectrum, we have like Infinity Gate that I recently read, not realizing it was a series. And I got to the end and had like a conniption fit because it ends on a big cliffhanger. And I was so mad because I thought that's just how the author decided to leave it. And then I found out it was a series and all was good. But I do think that cliffhangers have their place for sure. I don't want to feel manipulated by a cliffhanger. I'll bring up another book that I did feel manipulated by the cliffhanger with Iron Flame. So the Fourth Wing series, the second book. I stopped reading the series after I read the second book because the cliffhanger at the end, it's not really, well, I guess it's kind of a cliffhanger. It's a reveal that happens at the very end of the second book, and it is supposed to make you want to pick up the third. And I was like, no, at this point, I wash my hands of the series. I don't care to know because it just felt manipulative to me. And so I do think that I'm a little touchy about how it's done, whether or not it feels like it was intentional, and if it's supposed to entice readers versus manipulate them into picking up the next one. If it feels like I'm not going to give you this answer because I'm going to force you to pick up the next one, I'm not for that. If it's more of a, I want to intrigue you and guide you, entice you into the next storyline, then I'm game.
Yeah, I think that there also is something that you brought up, this idea of, such a big cliffhanger. Usually it's like a huge reveal that, like the really big ones that are trying to reel you in. It's a huge reveal and then it just cuts. And you're just left with this, what did they just say? Like it's like a last line of dialogue or something like you've just
Yes.
discovered, and then close curtains. And you're like, whoa, wait, what? Like that you're not giving me any more information versus there's also the softer cliffhanger. So maybe the cliff isn't as steep. We'll extend this metaphor a little bit. And it's more so this adventure in its, small vacuum has concluded, but the grand adventure continues. So like these characters have made it maybe to this one step. They've accomplished, they've regrouped, they've done whatever, but they still have the final boss to, we've got to
Yeah.
continue with this next section of the journey where it's kind of broken up in that way where this is done. We know that there's more story to tell, but it's not like a, ooh, big reveal, boom, explosions, fireworks, and then suddenly we feel dazed and unsure of what's happening. I think that if I had to choose, I do prefer the softer cliffhanger where
Yeah.
you just simply know that there's more to come rather than big flash reveal to suddenly like have our emotions go from, like our heart rate, our emotion monitor is going from like normal to spiked. That feels very manipulative to me. I think you're right.
Yeah. I agree wholeheartedly. Well, we do need to figure out why we're discussing cliffhangers today by going into our final discussion for the Devils. And I hear that you have a summary for us.
I do, and I'm gonna do my best. At this point, yeah, we've completely finished the book, and so there may be some suggestions of, some spoilers at this point. I'm gonna do my best to be vague, but if you haven't read The Devils up into this point, probably pause and then come back for our final discussion when you're ready. But our ragtag group of characters continues their journey towards Troy, and in fact, in this final section, we shouldn't be surprised. They do make it. They do arrive in Troy, and Alex is welcomed. It's a little bit suspicious, a little bit uncertain. They're not really sure what to make of all of this, but it seems like the entire city, its people, and those currently in charge are ecstatic to have Alex be their next empress. And that also brings up new quandaries, new questions, because this is the end of our journey with the Devils. They're supposed to bring Alex to the throne, watch the crown be placed on her head, and then make a speedy exit, returning to the holy city and just kind of washing their hands of the entire thing. As to be expected, it's not as simple, not as easy as we would hope for these characters. They do get extra obstacles. There are big reveals. People aren't necessarily who they say they are. And of course, we end with a huge battle, the battle of all battles that all of these characters have been working up to. And the question is, will they all survive? Will Alex end up being the next empress, or have these characters reached a demise that they can't really get themselves out of? This is the final battle that maybe they actually can't win, and they've won all the ones before this. And that's where I'm going to end the summary, with a little bit of intrigue, a little bit of uncertainty. And I think I actually nailed the whole avoiding spoiler thing, because I really didn't say much, and you know what, we're just going to have to accept it and get into the discussion. So let's speed up the narrative a little bit and just talk about the fact that we are in Troy. And we do, in fact, have one of our early predictions kind of be proven false, that it doesn't actually come true. We meet the fourth eldest son of Eudoxia. We've killed the other three. They're gone. They're old news. And you and I, Danny, thought that he was probably just going to be a copy and paste of the other three, because those three brothers are literally the same. Like, they are interchangeable, wouldn't have affected the plot at all. And we just assumed we were going to get this fourth clone and just have to deal with him in the same way we did before. But he ends up being completely opposite in a way. Like, he doesn't seem like he's like the purest soul ever, but he does approach Alex and her gang and this concept of her becoming empress in a completely different way than I expected. What did you think?
Yeah, I was quite surprised by his appearance and his interactions with Alex at the beginning, and I kept just waiting for the shoe to drop. I'm like, "There's gotta be, like he's gotta be a snake in the grass, like, he's
Mm-hmm.
really in here to, like, stab her in the back." But his personality was completely different than I was expecting, and I don't know, it kinda threw me through a loop. I did really enjoy, the short amount of time that they did interact, with one another. I actually liked his character quite a bit. I was just expecting, with all the repetition that we've had in the storyline, for this to just be another, token item for us to have the brother that is the exact same as all the other brothers. Also, I think I was a little weirded out too that they left the best for last as well. They continue to talk about the fact that this 4th brother is the eldest, so he's probably the one that has the most, like, on the line as far as being an heir to the throne, and then he's the one who has the most support in the city. And I'm like, "Okay, so why is he last? Why did we leave him?" I mean, obviously, he's the big bad boss, like, that was the purpose of all of it, but I thought that was interesting as well, that the one who stayed in the city is the one who had the most support from everyone. What did you think?
Right. I felt the same way. And in fact, I remained suspicious of him though the entire time
Yes,
up
me
until he
too.
died.
Yeah.
I was
I
like,
was
there's
like,
no
"He's
way.
gonna
There's
do
no way
something
he's this nice.
crazy."
Exactly. I was like, just wait. Especially when he's like, oh, drink the wine. And she's like, oh, is this poisoned? And I was like, yes, of course it's poisoned. And I was just waiting. I was like, this all has to just be a ploy. This is all him performing, trying to gain her, trust and confidence. And then we're going to find out that he actually plans on killing her, or whatever the case is. And he just never was. He never had that intention, apparently, or if he did, obviously he was foiled by another baddie in the castle. But yeah, I was a little bit surprised, especially because the other his brothers, what were their intentions then? If they killed Alex, were they then going to battle each other? Like, why were they more concerned about her, and were they going to then kill their older brother? It seemed really odd and a little bit confusing. I don't know. Like, I felt as though maybe the author was thinking, "Oh, let's make this like let's invert the narrative and kind of poke around and play, at the idea of, the final boss, the final brother is supposed to be this big bad guy, and in reality, the joke's on you. He's actually not. This would actually be a perfect scenario. Unfortunately, there is a big boss. It's just not the obvious person we thought it was. It was someone hiding in disguise in the form of Lady Severa, which we end up finding out is actually Eudoxia. And so I suppose maybe that was kind of darkly humorous, but it just left me on edge because I just didn't believe it. I was constantly waiting for him to reveal himself as being evil. And then when he died, I was like, oh, I didn't have to waste so much time assuming he was going to stab us in the back.
I also felt bad whenever he died, because I was like, because the last thing he said to her is "Run," like, he was
Yeah.
concerned with her, and I was like, "Oh, I kinda feel bad for thinking that you were a bad guy this entire time, when you were
Right.
really just trying to live your best life, and you didn't want to have a civil war in the country that you're from. So his story was very, very forlorn.
Indeed, and I felt badly that I didn't get to enjoy him just being a nice character.
I know.
So it's like, oh man, missed opportunity. Meanwhile, there were actually quite a few reveals, and we can kind of discuss how we feel about that. In addition to Eudoxia being Lady Severa, having this ability to swap souls and all of that. We also have a reveal in character. So, not someone pretending to be someone else, but just pretending to be kinder and not as, selfish, is Duke Michael. So, the supposed uncle of Alex, she thinks that he has always been in her corner, always had the best intentions, but alas, he himself was vying for the throne as well. And so we have a huge character switch in him, a 180, where suddenly he is the fourth brother. He's the clone that we weren't expecting.
Yeah, I thought that reveal I can't decide whether or not I like that or if I dislike it. It doesn't feel I feel like I didn't have enough clue, like, I don't have enough breadcrumbs to really believe that he was as sadistic as he came off in the end, like, really giving no shits about anyone but himself, and I don't know. I think that because of how the reveal was given, obviously, we weren't supposed to have any clue because it was supposed to be a surprise with Alex, but I think I would've liked something, like and I we got, like, the letters, we know that the letters were spread, and so obviously someone in the mix got a hold of them, but I feel like there could have been some really sneaky ways of implanting some breadcrumbs for me to eventually think that through. Otherwise, it's not like a fair play. I know this isn't a mystery, so I'm using a mystery term, but it's
Mhm.
not like fair play. And so I think that's what that why that reveal bothered me. And I didn't hate it. I don't hate him being the bad guy. I just after it happened, I was like, oh, well, okay.
I'll always love you using mystery references, so please feel free to continue. But I completely understand your point. And honestly, the thing is it's always funny with these types of reveals because at the beginning of the book when we met him, I thought, oh, he's taking advantage of her. I did wonder if that would be a reveal. And also, now that I think about it, we did have that reveal that Alex is an Alex. And that was something I was wondering if
Yes.
that was the case back in the first third of the book. And so I was wondering when we first had him like happen upon her, I was wondering, is he taking advantage of her? Does he know that she's not the real empress? Like there were thoughts going in my mind. And so I didn't really trust him. And then in the big battle, when he like almost died, when he went back, I kind of thought, oh, so he just was like he was just a pawn used to bring Alex to our ragtag team of monsters, and then be on their way, and he was going to be left uh, to go back to the holy city. So my suspicion of him disappeared as soon as he disappeared, and
Yeah.
if we think about it, that battle happened a long time ago. So if anything, I think what also is maybe a bit of a disappointment is that like when we think about how large this book is, he is for a majority of it not on page. We don't see him. And I think that's what leans into what makes you think of fair play mysteries. Because when we do have a villain, when we do have, the murderer, the killer, the idea is that they should be in sight for a good amount of the book for us to have time to maybe sniff them out.
Yeah.
And so this villain was in the book from the beginning, but then hundreds of pages did not see him. He was obviously referenced, but we did not see
Yeah.
him with our characters. And suddenly he shows up and he's in Troy and he's like, yay, you're here. By the way, I'm evil. And you're like, what? Like, we just spent what, like 300 plus pages without you. Like, what's going on?
Yeah, it made it more difficult to have any which we're not supposed to have any empathy for him, but because we don't have that buildup, it's less of a letdown for us. Like, we have these little moments with Alex as she does reference him throughout the story of, like, really wishing that Duke Michael were there because even though she's only known him for a couple of days, she feels connected to him because of, I guess he made her feel safe. But if we would have received more of that, it would have felt like more of a betrayal at the end, which I think would have been a little bit more impactful than just being like, okay, I guess. I guess that's okay." So, yeah, that was a bit
Yeah.
of a bummer for me. The Eudoxia thing, I think was also I don't know that it was as much of a disappointment. Obviously, she's not on page at all within the first 400, 500 pages of the book, so we don't get to know her as a character. I think that the conversations that she ends up having with Balthazar gives her a little bit more life, I suppose. Although I thought the whole, like, them running off together conversation was very weird and another coupling that I'm like, "Why?" I don't need that. But at least, like, them having the conversation of her figuring out, like, how to transfer souls is, like, the work of her life, and that's really what she cares about. She really doesn't care about being on the throne, even though she does, because she's willing to be with her brother to be on the throne. Like, that was a weird conversation, but I did at least feel like the conversation with Balthazar gave me more information about her than I'd had. So, how did you feel about that scene?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I have thoughts, but I am going to have a little bit of a pit stop in the whole incest situation. What are we talking about? So, first, I was like, okay, fine. We'll accept that these cousins are getting married, especially because we know that Alex is not the real Alexia. But it's just like, oh my gosh, most of them don't know this. And so it's incest without being incest. I thought that was going to be the closest degree of incest that we were working with. And then we get the reveal that Lady Severa is actually Eudoxia, and she had said yes to Duke Michael's proposal, whatever the case is. And she was very much willing to marry her brother then. And she was like, gotta do what you gotta do. And I'm like, no, Eudoxia, you absolutely do not. Oh God, I hate that. And those of us who like know my reading preferences, that is one of my biggest icks, is when we have incest in the mix in any way. I hate it. It's not necessary. I get that historically it was a thing, but we're writing from a 2025 perspective. It doesn't need to be a thing in our historical inspired works, but that's just me. Now when it comes to Eudoxia and Balthazar, I did appreciate this one bit when he discovers who it is, because she throws, what does she throw? Like a lightning bolt at him. Like she can throw lightning. He catches it, and and they both are shocked by each other because he thinks, "Oh, you can do this. Like you just threw that." And she said, "You caught it." And then he realizes, "Wait a second, only Eudoxia has been described of having these abilities." And then he puts two and two together and realizes that it's Eudoxia. And then she just simply, is impressed by his own prowess. And I just don't, I feel as though there were a lot of weird couplings. And I think it makes it weirder for him to have this, appreciation of Eudoxia, this potential of, running away, especially when for a good amount of the book, it was one-sided, but he had this preference for Baptiste.
Mhm.
And so now that we are aware that Baptiste dies by the end of the book, it just feels as though a bit of a replacement. Like the author
Yeah.
knew, oh, she's going to die. And so we need Balthazar to have some type of preference to someone else and affection to push the story forward. So let's just kind of make this switch happen because Baptiste is expendable, especially because nothing actually progressed with that potential relationship. It was just Balthazar being attracted to her.
Yeah, I also think that him being attracted to Eudoxia gives him an out for when he gets sent back. He tells the people who are working, it's the cardinal whose name I'm not gonna remember. He
Zishka,
Yeah.
yeah,
He tells the cardinal, like, "No, I believe that the pope is, the savior's next coming or whatever. Like, I'll work with you. You don't have to put me in the prison." And she does it anyway. She treats him horribly, and he's like, "Well, I'm gonna keep trying to get away from you then." And it gives him an out So for this next book in the series, I feel like we're going to be on repetition again with him trying to get out of the papal binding, making deals with demons and things like that, because he now has this interaction with Eudoxia to kind of, I don't know, play off of.
Yeah, and speaking of repetition, I mean, we still got it in this final third.
Oh, yeah.
Almost more. Like, I felt as though the author doubled down and really was like, oh yeah, if you notice the repetition, I'm going to make sure you notice it now. Because we have, the thing is obviously there was this supposed twist, an unexpected change in the fact that the eldest brother wasn't this evil guy. But once we figure out who the evil person is, which is the Duke, we have this face-off between none other than Jakob, and they have this battle of swords. And I'm like, we've seen this 3 times before. It's always Jakob going against the bad guy, and they, are fighting, and Jakob has an edge because he can't die. So that is exactly the same thing. Alex being saved by Sunny, and Sunny having to help seek her out. I also, by the way, this is a small thing, but the fact that Sunny and Alex have a makeout session or kiss after Sunny's vomited, I could not. I was like, are you kidding me right now? Anyway, couldn't be me. And so then of course we've got Brother Diaz, with Viga, and I feel as though we just had them all doing the same thing. And obviously we have Baltazar facing off with the other, magician / sorceress character. So this is just them doing it again, but in a different place. They're now doing it in Troy, and the stakes are higher simply because it's the final battle for this entire narrative. So and even some of the phrases, I swear, I started feeling deja vu, and I was like, did I just reread the same paragraph? And then I realized, no, it's just they said the same thing. An example is actually in the chapter, A War in Miniature. So especially if you're listening on audio, you hear a war in miniature, and then it's a sword fight is a war in miniature, and then another couple paragraphs down, a sword fight is a war in miniature. And I was like, what did I do? Did it skip? What's going on? And I realized, no, we've just heard the same phrase 3 times in one page. And it happened quite a bit in this section across the characters, I think.
Yeah, that one in particular, I actually went back and rewound because I was like, I missed something, or I'm like, I thought there was something wrong with my audio.
Right.
And I was like, nope, we're just repeating the same sentence. And then it repeated again. And I was like, why are we repeating the same sentence? And it wasn't even the war in miniature. I'm like, why is this important? Why do I care about this sentence? Because obviously you think the sentence is important, but I do not. And then Alex's, oh God, whenever she gets stuck in a bind, once again, that happened over and over and over again. And I think Balthazar's catchphrase came back too. Like, I just, yeah. And even I think the comments that I don't know if it was Baptiste or if it was people surrounding Baptiste, but they keep referring to how she never sticks her neck out. And then when she dies, they end up saying like, well, yeah, she sticks her neck out. And then Jakob's like, yeah, she always does. And I'm like, what?
Like, it truly, like, it actually kind of makes you start to feel like you're going insane.
Yes.
And you're just like, what is actually, oh gosh. Yeah, that line specifically, when they said, well, she stuck her neck out, and he's like, yeah, she does. And that's all they really reference to her death, beyond the fact that Viga is so upset with herself because yet again, she has, killed one of their own. And I think that's also, I mean, it's repetition, but not repetition we've seen. We've just been told. Right. So I think that even is like kind of hilarious in the worst way, that they reference past like battles and past missions, and even those are being repeated because this is what's happened before. They joke about, oh yeah, Vika killed so and so and so and so, and then she's like, this entire ragtag group, right? How many people have they battled? How often have they been like drenched in gore and all of these things? And yet by the end of the book, the one character in their group who dies, it's because of Vega. It's not even because they've just been battling all of these people. So yeah, it kind of, and not really a surprise that someone had. I think at this point we knew that someone had to die, especially because there is a moment as they're on a ship departing, or their intention is to leave Troy, and they think, wow, this is the first time in a while no one's died on a mission, huh? And then the flares go up when it comes to the alert that, oh, elves are attacking, because that's the only way for Alex to alert people that she's in danger. And they go back, and I'm like, okay, well, at least one person's going to die, because they just referenced, wow, nobody's died. And I knew it was going to be probably like at least one person. It's a bit disappointing that it's literally them killing their own. That's kind of like roll my eyes.
Yeah, I was a little disgusted by that as well. I didn't like the choice of character to die. Not that I had any attachment to Baptiste. I don't think I really have an attachment to anybody, but I thought it would have been very nice and well-rounded for Jakob to finally get his death. That's what I thought we were leading to, was one of them is going to have to die, and there's going to be something that happens within this mission that allows him to finally let go, and it will almost be a good thing, like a boon, in, the wake of all of this death. Instead, we just have Vega, who already has had like a crisis of hating herself and having other people hate her and wanting to feel like she's in control, not be in control and kill one of the people who was supportive of her. I'm like, I mean, I know this is grimdark. It's not supposed to be happy. So like, I don't want to say that I hate it because of that. I just feel like there could have been better ways, better
Mhm.
characters, better situations that this could have happened, and it still could have felt like a dystopian, sad, grim world for these characters.
And just more meaningful. I feel like Jakob finally dying would be more meaningful, especially because I'm actually at this point like so tired of someone running their sword through him. We
Yes.
need them to do something else, because I feel as though once again there's this repetition of him kind of almost dying and then managing to just kill the other person, and he'll eventually reanimate at some point. He's tired. We are tired. It makes more sense for him to finally be able to rest, and that would still be a wrenching feeling for the group,
Yeah.
because he has also been someone that they've been so dependent on. He's, yes, the one who's kind of keeping them all together and not guarding them or in control of them, but everyone else is forced by the binding, and he's just here on the mission. But I feel like that would be a huge blow to everyone, even though that's something that he wants. There's also this recognition that their natural leader, the kind of voice of wisdom, who's been through it, for so long, that they can kind of rely on him. He has died. I think that would just make more sense, because I was also predicting him, actually. Especially because they kept referencing how he couldn't die. I felt as though that was like a big nod to him finally dying at the end of the book, and instead it does feel as though the most expendable people are then replaced. Maybe that is going through the author's head of what I need to keep the group cohesive in the idea of what everyone represents, who's the easiest to kind of kill, to add new recruits to the mix in a way, because we do have someone replace Brother Diaz, and then we have someone replace Baptiste, and they're on their way to the Holy City to join the crew, because Brother Diaz has stayed with Alex and then Baptiste has died. And I feel as though maybe just because Baptiste was the easiest person to kill, if we're thinking about it, Alex can't die because she's supposed to be Empress. We've got an elf. We've got a vampire who's just doing his own thing. Then, because we realized too that he's not bound by anything because he doesn't have a soul. So he's just here to, spend time in his eternity doing something of interest. And then, of course, we've got Baltasar that has an ongoing story. So it feels as though the only person who the author also just didn't really dedicate as much time to developing is Baptiste. And so he
Yeah.
just was like, oh, let's replace her. And there's not much more said about it.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, I'm really glad that you brought up Baron Ricard's not having a soul and him kind of doing his own thing, because I have two things that I want to talk about prior to the end of the episode. And if you have more that you would like to discuss, by all means. But I just want to mention these two things because I really did like these two elements. One was finding out that Baron Ricard is just along for the ride. I think that that's very fun for him to not be bound. And I almost wonder, does the Pope think he's bound? Like, does everyone else, other than obviously Balthazar, thought he was bound, but does everyone else know that he's not, or are they all being tricked by him? Because I find that very fun. So I liked that. And then I also really enjoyed the scene with Brother Diaz in his paperwork and like essentially showing all of the nobles, because all the nobles are trying to get this stuff from Alex now that she is going to be empress, and they're, demanding things from her. And he's like, well, actually, and he goes through all of his little books and essentially says that they owe her a whole bunch of money if they're going to be like that. I really liked him being in his element. I thought that was a very fun scene. So those are two scenes that I enjoyed with this section. What are your responses to those? And then do you have any scenes that you would like to bring up?
Yeah, honestly, both of those were excellent scenes, especially because I feel as though the characters who were the highlights of those scenes were in their element. So, for instance, Baron Ricard just saying, I actually am the cleverest of them all because I truly don't need to do this. I am just simply here. And you kind of realize that this also tracks with his entire demeanor, what he's doing. And I feel as though no one knows. I think that he even divulges it to Balthasar, this idea of, because they're discussing souls, because that's something that Eudoxia is obsessed with, and this like transference of souls, of not being affected whether or not you have a soul. And then that is when the Baron says, yeah, I don't have a soul. And there's this realization of, oh, wait a second. If you don't have a soul, then, and yeah, Baron says, yeah, I'm just here for the ride. I'm happy to be here. I'm assuming that those in the Holy City, the Pope, they don't realize this. They just assume that they have him, and he probably is tickled by that, thinking that everyone thinks they have him under control, and he's like, no, I'm the one in control, with my references to dumplings all the time, which I also think is like a little bit weird, but dumplings are delicious. And then when it comes to Brother Diaz, he was able to finally prove his worth as well, because he was a character that was in charge of this group, but obviously none of them really respected him in the sense that he could control them. He was terrified for his life, and they're like, this is, like every other day of our lives, like, keep up with the program. And then when he's able to, use his understanding of the documents and, prove like his own case in front of everyone. And I think it's Viga or someone else saying, wow, oh my gosh, he is worth something. Like, he actually has proven it. And I think there's also a moment where Brother Diaz is reflecting on the trials and everything, and him finally being in this position to be like Alex's, second in command, in a way where he's supporting her, and he thinks, I'm going to do good work. Like, this is where I'm, most beneficial. And so I was really pleased to see him also finally find a place that he can use his strengths too. And I feel like we've seen him grow enough where it's not him simply being like, aha, I deserve this prestige. It's that he's been through the trenches. He has gone through so many things. He's learned his mistakes from the past to think, okay, now, I'm invested in Alex. He supports her. It's not just simply the position for his own glory. He believes in what he's doing. And so, yeah, I did enjoy that. I also enjoy Alex in so far as her coming into her own, because she just, at the end of the day, she wasn't the princess, right? She has this heart to heart with Sunny, I believe, saying, I'm not meant to be here. I stole this, coin. I ended up, faking this birthmark, because the true Alexia, she died. I met her. She had this crazy story, and I decided to basically steal it when she died, so that I had, this feeling that I am important. And then, of course, she ends up being kind of regretting this entire situation. But like, even with all that said, she's also proven that she can learn, that she can, be assertive, that she can use her street smarts, but also, stand up for the greater good. And I think it's kind of nice that when we think about it, the person who's currently on the throne is of, the lower classes, isn't born
Yes.
of the elite. And yet she is now like the empress of the people. So yeah, I'm glad that she isn't the true princess. I like that twist, that she actually does come from the streets, from, her parents being like working class and just the struggles. And yet she is the one that we can put our trust in.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think
Mm-hmm.
I think her character, her and really even Brother Diaz, I did see a lot of growth in their entire trek just because of the circumstances they started in and then where they ended up in the end. So, speaking of the end, we need to answer our 3 questions. So, the first question is we want to tell our rating of the story. Second question, our favorite character of the book. And then third question, we typically do predictions, but instead of doing that, let's talk about whether or not we would continue the series. So, we know at the end of this book there is a little bit of a cliffhanger leaving off with a new person who's going to take over the congregation of the devils. And so we know that the journey is going to continue on to at least one more book. So those 3 questions, would you like to answer first?
Yes, I can answer first. I think I'll answer them in random order. When it comes to my favorite character of the section and of the book, I do think it's gonna be a curveball. Not necessarily a curveball, but like, because I've spoken on this character before, but I do think that there's someone we kind of can be like slept on and isn't like a big star. But I do like Baron Ricard. I find him very interesting. He's a bit more of a secondary character at times because, again, there are a lot of other characters that we focus on. But he was the most sane. He didn't get with anyone in the sense that he was forced to couple up. And I do like that last moment of him saying, yeah, no, I'm just here for the ride. I'm here for a good time. Because I feel like that just matches his character. So yeah, I did find him to be a shining light in this book. Whenever he was on page, he was quite fun, especially his whole aging thing with the blood and all of that. Found that really fascinating. And when it comes to my rating, I keep saying 3.75, and I'm tempted to lower it just simply because this was just a repeat of sections 1 and 2. Like, I feel as though, yes, the story progressed, but because nothing really changed, and even though there are moments that I want to grab from, the narrative and think, oh yeah, that's a great character, or yes, the character development or the ending and certain parts were great, but at the end of the day, it just is. There are so many other books that I would give a 3.75 that I liked far more than this one, especially because I would have DNF'd this numerous times because I just ended up not working for me. So I think I'm probably going to just sit at, I'll give it a 3.5. It's not that big of a lowering, but it is, like, obviously the author can write. If I sit on it longer, it might lower to something like a 3.0. But I mean, there is an audience for this, and I do think there are enough lovely parts that I might sit on a 3.5. Now, if you have a lower rating than me, you might convince me to go lower, but I think that a 3.5 is fair. But I also didn't go in with really any expectations and kind of expected it not to. I kind of expected to hate it, if we're being honest. Like, I thought I was going to give it like a 2. So maybe that impacted things. And with that, I'm definitely not continuing the series, though. It's just not for me. I found it interesting as an experiment, but all of the bodily functions, the kind of childish humor, and it just didn't impress me. And it felt as though every time someone was mentioned of, passing gas, of vomiting, of, having sex with someone that they shouldn't have sex with, or whatever the case is, I was just like, yep, same old, same old. And so I won't be continuing. I don't really have an interest in it, but I'll be interested in hearing your answers, Danny.
I'll answer in the same order that you did. So you stole my favorite character because I was also going to say Baron Northgard because I think he's great. And he is definitely a sleeper character. I don't even think we talked about him on the first episode when we discussed because he didn't really do anything, but when he is on page, he is very fascinating. I like his character a lot. But for the sake of giving a different answer, I will tell you who I would read a novella of. Like if I could get any of these characters and I could have the author write a prequel to this, which one would I pick? And I would pick Jakob. I think his history, and we got little bits and pieces of it throughout the story, but I didn't get enough for my liking. I would have liked to have lived through some of those moments with him. And I know we've discussed that throughout the discussions that we've had, that we would have liked to have seen that for a lot of the characters. But for him in particular, because he's so old and he has these beliefs that he needs to be punished, I would like to live through some of those moments that he thinks he should be punished for. So I think that's the character I'm going to choose. The rating that I'm going to give this book is a 3.5. I did lower it from a 3.75 because while I do think that there were certain aspects of the story I really did like, and I think it was a relatively easy read. I don't think I was struggling through it. But the repetition by the end, I was like, I don't understand what we're doing. I don't know why we're doing this. I don't recall this ever being in any of the Abercrombies I've read before. So I mean, authors can try different things, so I'm not going to say like no one should ever do that, but it was a little irritating for me, a little grating at times. And I just I think I just wanted more from the story. I feel like it's not gonna stick with me other than maybe the potty humor is going to just burn itself into my head because it was a lot even for me. So I feel bad for you, friend, because it's not
I
normally so.
okay, like I feel like I was a really good sport.
You were.
I tried.
I've read a lot of, not a lot, but I've read grimdark and books that have potty humor in it, and it usually does not bother me. Or like there'll be like a chapter where it's really heavy, and then the rest of the book is fine. But man, this one just dug in and wasn't going to let it go. So that as well, I think is why I'm going to lower my rating to a 3.5 because I don't think that it's a bad book. I'm not mad that I read it. I think that it's an interesting experience to have an author who I've absolutely loved the series in the past and come in and read this and find, yeah, this one's just not quite for me. Um, but I do think that it's well written and it is engaging. I think that there are certain things that were definitely pulling me out of the story throughout. So the random relationships and which that I don't like in any book. So, it had some things that definitely pulled it down for me. And then as far as me continuing, I do not think I will be continuing the series. Not unless I could be convinced. If someone who I have similar taste to read the second book and was like, "Oh my god, it's so much better than the first book. It's, classic Abercrombie. It flips, everything on its head." I might be tempted because I do like some of the characters, but it would have to be a really intense review for me to make that decision because these are really chonky books. They're time consuming. I don't I feel like I have other series I would rather be in the midst of than come back into this really gritty world.
And there would have to be a good reason for him to significantly change the way he's writing this series if it is quite different as far as like the type of humor he's using and the repetition. We would have to get more insights into why exactly he changed so starkly, and that would be fascinating if he did change the tone in that. But I'll be interested to keep track. So even though I'm not going to be reading forward with this, I will keep an eye on it, keep an eye on the reviews of people who not only read The Devils, but also continue with the series, just simply because at this point I'm invested in that. Having started the series, I'm invested in seeing what's to come and how people react to it.
Guess we'll find out in the future somewhere, sometime, whenever the second book is published.
No, we certainly will. And with that, we have finished our month of discussion for The Devils by Joe Abercrombie. For those who may not be aware, next month, so the entire month of November, we are just going to be returning to bookish discussions every single Friday. And then our next book club pick will be for December. Now, if you can't wait, if you want to spoil yourself for the excitement, maybe to get a hold in early, then we should have our choice for the December's book in the description. So feel free to go there to find out what we're going to be reading in December. But if you're willing to wait, if you want to be excited for the next 2 weeks, waiting patiently in 2 Fridays, so not next Friday, but the Friday after this, Danny and I are going to be showing our process when it comes to choosing a book club book, how we go about it, the different contenders that we are considering until we finally decide on the one we're reading. It should be a good episode, so stay tuned. And then, of course, next week is Halloween. So get excited for our Halloween episode as well, which will be bookish in tone, and it should be a good time. So until then, friends, happy reading whatever you pick up next, and thanks for hanging out with us. Bye!